I think Jacinta picked up on this in about her community. There's this brilliant video, and you might be able to show it, Dave, where Dave Rubin is interviewing Larry Elder, an African American, and he says, "What's the problem here? Is it systemic racism?" And like Jacinta so rightly said, and Anthony, no, it's actually the issue of fatherlessness. It's the breakdown of the nuclear family within those communities. And Dave Rubin had that red pill moment, which he himself described, where he just said his eyes were open and all of a sudden he saw it for what it is. Just quickly, I was a pastor in a little outback town. Jacinta has probably heard of it, called Weewaw, out near Moree. 40% of the town is Aboriginal. My children went to a school, 50% were Aboriginal. It was tragic just to see how many people in the town were raised in families that were Aboriginal that had no father figure. And the effects of that on wives and on children was just heartbreakingly massive. I saw kids go from, I would teach them scripture in year 6 and they would be prostitutes by year 7 and year 8 at high school. Pregnant with a number of kids before they left. That's heartbreaking. And there's actually more complicated issues than people just want to easily say, hashtag, Black Lives Matter. Of course, Black Lives Matter. All lives matter. We want to affirm everybody, well, particularly me as a Christian, everybody's made in the image of God. Everybody's equal. Everybody's precious. Warren Mondine, I just say this in closing because I know this, I'm sure, Jacinta and Warren will come in and say some helpful things here. But, Warren mentioned that our government gives $30 billion a year to helping Black communities. $30 billion. The Australian government and the Australian people, I think, are trying to do all that they can. The question is, though, and I flip this to Jacinta, it's obviously not working. And we really, I think, need to do more to actually address the core issues. And I know Eliza Main in the comments section asked that, when we get past all the sloganeering, past the riots, past the looting, what can we really do to help Aboriginal people?
Absolutely. And I think the main thing is also, is not to throw more money at it, because clearly there's an abundance of money there available, and we're going to have to, the purse strings are going to have to get tightened, because now we're going to be left with a debt to deal with, as you mentioned before, for years to come with regard to the impact of COVID-19. So what the government has to do and get tough with is, instead of just, throwing money and getting bureaucratic documents back with a tick and flick saying, this has been spent here and this has been, and then, our leaders can stand up and say, we put this amount of money here and this amount of money there. We actually need to figure out where this money is having an impact and where it is working. Because what's happened is we've got not only, Indigenous people suffering because of welfare, but we've got an entire Indigenous grievance industry that is totally reliant on government welfare. So, Ken White's just announced that he wants to find measures, to decrease incarceration rates. And then you've got leaders of Aboriginal organisations saying, well, actually, you need to throw more money at us in order for us to solve this issue. And it should be up to us to solve this issue. Well, I'm sorry, but these Aboriginal bureaucracies have had decades to do as they claim, that they've been doing, which is to improve the lives of Aboriginal people. So it's now time for the government to hold these Aboriginal bureaucracies to account for the billions of dollars that have been, we don't know where they've gone.
Well, it's a very similar problem to what Warren was talking about last week with sit-down money, and that was basically that the advent of the welfare state really became the beginning of, and look, credit for good intentions, like the left side of politics that introduced these social safety nets actually were trying to do good things, but the result has been abysmal. The result has been social chaos. The result has been communities becoming dependent on the government instead of traditional family values, and community itself. And surely we have to look at the whole picture and say, if we're trying to solve the cultural problems that are going on here, fatherlessness is the root of so many social problems, including incomplete education, broken marriages, substance abuse, and criminality. It's such a constant predictor of adverse outcomes is going to be broken families. And so what can we as a community do to fix that? The hard part, I think you guys have been saying tonight, is that actually makes us look at ourselves instead of blaming somebody else, the government, the society around us, the laws, and people of a different colour. Feel free to jump in, anybody, if you've got anything to add right here.
I think I might jump in and just make the observation. So fatherlessness can be a indicator of, a dysfunctional family environment, obviously, but the question is, what's the cause of fatherlessness? And I really, and it doesn't matter what community you're talking about. There's plenty of communities that do suffer from, higher rates of families without fathers, with young boys without fathers that are causing problems. And, to me, and this is a hard thing to say to people that are affected by these sort of comments, but it's welfare. I mean, welfare is almost like a drug. I mean, you give welfare to anyone. It doesn't matter whether you're Indigenous, not. You give welfare to a family long term over many generations. It's like a drug, and it's so damn hard to get off. And and the damage that being on that drug can do to any society. And you see it where they used to have the Housing Commission homes together, clustered together in Melbourne, for example, and everything that went wrong. They broke all that up because they realised that having clustered communities and suburbs of welfare recipients was just a recipe for disaster. And I honestly fear that a lot of these Aboriginal communities are basically similarly. They're just welfare towns, and it's very destructive.
It's not enough to do nothing. It's time for us to do something.